morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here, live from the Trust Village in the Campus Unlimited Trust in Prix. We have the pleasure of welcoming the speakers for a webinar on tokenization. Is it a thing of the past? I will let the 5 speakers introduce themselves. We have three of them online. 2 of them are joining, 3 of them on site and 2 of them joining online. For those of you speaking live, remember that the mic is there. And dear public, you'll have time at the end of the webinar to ask questions. Should I start by Sixtine, by WISe.ART and WISe.ART being present to this workshop? Sixtine, I'll let you introduce.
Okay, thank you very much, Flaminia. First of all, let me tell you how excited we are to be here in the Innovation Park in Lausanne, Switzerland. Welcome to everybody. We are being recorded. This is also a Zoom session, so the whole recording will be available on the WISe.ART YouTube channel in the future. So I'd like to welcome Antoine Sarraute, who's also here from Geneva. He's the co-founder of Wakweli and decided to join us. He's also part of Trust Valley, so we're very happy to be here, invited by Trust Valley. And we've got Jonathan Llamas, who's working for SEALCOIN and joined us from Zurich this morning. So I hope that wasn't too early for you to start. And then I would like to introduce you to Andrew Forson, who's joining us from Spain, I believe. Are you in Spain?
I'm in Faficon. I'm in Zurich today.
Oh, you're in Zurich. Okay.
Yes.
And of course, Georg back, who could be a little bit jet lagged because he's just come back from Art Miami. So we still see the palm trees in the background. So thanks for joining us, Georg. Again, as Flavinia says, the questions can be at the end, but if you find that you have something to add or say during the conversation, this is an informal session, please feel free to just interact and I'm sure everybody will be happy to answer. So I'll start with Andrew. We're partners in crime, sort of, because you're actually working for Hedera, and WISe.ART has partnered with Hedera a few years back, and it was announced in Davos, and we were very excited. So please, welcome and tell us a little bit what Hedera is doing in the tech industry.
Wow. Well, Hedera's layer 1 distributed ledger technology platform, analogous to a blockchain. And as most people in the audience may or may not know, the last few months have been particularly exciting for the blockchain, Web3, and crypto space. What we're finding is there's still a lot of activity in terms of tokenization, of course, in the use of stable coins, and the tokenization of things as interesting as art to real estate to commodities. But we're also finding a general move towards enterprise adoption, increased enterprise adoption. So we're excited for that. We're well positioned for that. Thank you so much for having us here today, Sixtine.
You will talk a little bit more about enterprise tokenization later, because I'm sure it's a new thing. And we'll all be very happy to know. But then we'll go on to Antoine, co-founder of Wakweli. So what's Wakweli?
Wakweli is a foundation based in Geneva with a mission to fight scammers, because we live in a digital age where the notion of trust is not evident. So we are here to replace all the blue badge you see on tokenized asset marketplaces, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, etc., with something powered by the community in a decentralized way.
So it has to be accepted by everyone. If anybody wants to tokenize a share or tokenize a piece of art, they need to have a certification through Wakweli to be accepted by the community or granted by the community.
It's not exactly like this. Let's say if you emit your shares at tokenized assets, it's not evident to see which one is the real share. And it's possible to impersonate your company and like sell certificates that are not actually representing your holding of the company. We're here to fight this kind of problem.
Okay. Does that happen often?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
On OpenSea, they say more than 80% of what happens on the platform is from scammers.
Okay, well, that's good to know, and good to know that you're there trying to protect us. Georg, welcome. How was Art Miami?
It was always, like always, very vibrant. A mix of traditional art and NFTs and digital art. So yeah, there's lots of events. I don't think it's comparable to our Basel though. In Basel, where more serious discussions about art are taking place, and you have much better art displayed. But it was
Still.
exciting.
So you founded, or you created the first digital art mile at Art Basel last June. And it was all numeric or digital art, also some vintage tokens of art. Do you find that it's moving along a little bit more, or are you still sort of training? And as you just said, the traditional art is still, that world is still quite separate.
I'm witnessing a very interesting shift in the market. I mean, I was just kind of comparing the traditional artwork with an NFT drop that is just happening right now with the Swiss artist Echo33, who is just about to sell 500 artworks within 3 days. And the way it goes is that you buy an NFT, and once you purchase the NFT, you can also claim a physical signed artwork to be shipped to your place at cost. So it doesn't cost you any extra, just the production cost. So this is a very interesting new way to market art, in my opinion, because you basically produce art on demand, and the sale is hugely successful. So they just made about the same amount of money within 3 days as a successful gallery is making in one year. So I see a lot of potential for the NFT market, also for traditional art.
Yeah, we've maybe at WISe.ART, WISe.ART, for those who don't know, we've started with this 3 years ago. That was a concept as well, where we were tokenizing existing art, and in particular, historical art. So we've got a lot of collections from museums and Renaissance art from Italy and private collections. And we actually issued the digital certificate. Now, a lot of times it's changing back from artists using numeric art, and it can be 10 years ago. I mean, numeric art has existed for a long time, back to the 50s. And that numeric art is now being made physical by the printing or 3D printers, or with technology it's now possible, but it's still being a token. So one of the questions, Georg, that we have is, which is the valuable bit, the digital certification, the NFT, or the physical art piece?
At the moment, if you look at the art market, very often galleries or platforms are offering 2 ways to buy an artwork. Either you choose the physical artwork or you choose the NFT. And in most cases, the NFT is more expensive. I personally think I would go for the physical art because I think of a signed artwork at some point. I believe that every physical artwork will have an NFT attached in 5 or 10 years. It just makes totally sense to certify artworks through an NFT and not issue paper certificates. So if you think about that to the future, it's probably not so bad to have a physical print instead of the NFT if you have the choice, because the physical print will be equivalent to a vintage print, just like it's used in photography. You have several prints made of a photograph, but the vintage prints are the most valuable ones. So I think it's always interesting to acquire a physical digital artwork, if there is such an option. I mean, quite often it's also a moving
We're
image.
losing you a little bit. I'm just wondering if the cable is hooked into your computer properly, because it's very, there's a lot of interference.
Are you talking to me or?
Yes.
Well, everything is hooked up well here. I don't know.
Okay, it might just be the connection, but yeah. So what you're saying basically, and we'll come to Jonathan in a minute because he's doing the tokenization of completely different things. But what you're saying is that the NFT does not one cancels out the other. So if you have a physical art piece, the NFT is burnt. Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is if there is an option to have a physical artwork signed by the artist, I would go for that option. It's also for preservation reasons of digital art. It's a very interesting way to keep an artwork in its.
We're preserving a cultural heritage or future cultural heritage. I also think that with contemporary artists or artists who are alive and creating today, it should go on the blockchain just for preservation. It's like a giant ledger. And in the old days, we had catalogue raisonnés. Now we have the blockchain and we should use it. So how do you use the blockchain? You're from SEALCOIN. What is SEALCOIN?
So SEALCOIN is many things, but I think we've been using a very big word, tokenization, tokenizing, we've been overusing it. I think it has been overused in the whole industry, and I'm not convinced that everyone has a good understanding of what it is and what we're talking about. So maybe let's try first to provide the simplified definition of what it means first, because then depending on what we are tokenizing, we can maybe envisage how to use this piece of technology in the end in a different context. So if I had to simplify it, let's think of it as a way to provide digital integrity to an object. That's simple enough. And this digital integrity, as we've heard from Georg, from Antoine, from also Sixtine on the context of NFT, we understand that we can tokenize maybe physical object in the context of art. We can tokenize money. We've heard it with Bitcoin, Ethereum, all the cryptocurrencies that you might have heard. In our context, we're talking digital objects, IoT, but also certificates. To understand this, how to provide digital integrity is to go back to the definition of regulators. FINMA, the Swiss regulator regulating the banks, are classifying all those objects in 3 categories. Again, let's try to simplify what we're talking about. 3 objects, 3 classification. It can be a mean of payment, cryptocurrency, Bitcoin. It can be, so that's the easy part with tokenizing money in terms of regulation. On the extreme part, you have equity shares. You can tokenize shares. The same way you would have your shares on the exchange, you can tokenize these. And those are like physical contracts that you tokenize. In between, they have the concept of providing utility. This utility can be defined as an easy example. We're here at TrustSquare, cryptographic rules. Let's think about a token as a digital key, providing you access to somewhere. This somewhere, most of the time now, it's going to be inside a platform. So we can tokenize. If I give you this token, okay, you can tokenize the access to this platform. This is what is called utility.
For instance, on Wakweli, we have a utility token that you need to request a certificate to validate it, etc. It's the fuel of the whole protocol.
So the utility, exactly, that's a good example. Let's take the example of Ethereum that everyone, I believe, is more familiar with. Ethereum can be the cryptocurrency with which I'm going to exchange value as a means of payment. Okay? Simple cryptocurrency as a payment token. It's also the token that I will use when I want to execute a smart contract on Ethereum infrastructure. That's the utility I get. I pay Ethereum to get access to the platform and to use their infrastructure.
And it was a pure utility token that became a means of payment because of the success, but it is utility token.
So, and you can, and I think that's also interesting because you can intend a certain form of utility, and adoption or not adoption will eventually redefine what you want to do with this tokenization. If we go back to Georg's example and to WISe.ART environment of providing liquidity to the market of art, if I tokenize a physical piece of art, it's one thing to give you the representation of this physical object into a token that you can move freely and easily. It's something else to give you liquidity of that, because if no one is using it, what's the value of it? You still have tokenized the same thing. You're still using the same infrastructure and technology, but the value will depend also on the liquidity. So I think we've put a lot of meanings behind the concept of tokenization. Let's reduce it down to the concept of providing digital integrity to an object. And then depending on the context of this object, we can better precise the definition of what it means when we speak about tokenization. In a nutshell.
If I understand you correctly, when you mention IoT, like the Internet of Things, the two objects that are interacting, if you want, or communicating, would have to be a member or would have to have a certain amount of utility tokens, or not really?
We can design that, but let's give you the journey of an IoT object. It can be your watch, it can be any type of object. It can be your laptop, your phone. First of all, within SEALCOIN, what we want to do is to tokenize the identity of the users. When I say identity, again, it's a bad word. It's not really an identity. It's a representation, authentication of who you are, okay, inside the platform, and we're already tokenizing that. But think of it or view it as a KYC of art, and we're going to provide you with authentication proof that you are who you claim you are. That's the first step. We have tokenized you in a way. Okay. Then you own objects. You want to register your device online. What we're going to do is that inside these devices, you have a lot of semiconductors. What we're doing, because WISe.ART is also a semiconductor company, is that we are injecting a digital identity inside this digital object. So we can make sure that this object is genuine, and we can claim the ownership of this object with the owner of this object, because they both have a digital identity. So that's the pre-work that we're doing. In doing this pre-work, we're tokenizing an individual, an object, and a wallet, because we need to put those keys somewhere. And what we're doing is that we're linking all of that inside a wallet. So we have also tokenized your money. Once we have that, we want that any object can transact with any other object in this constellation of objects inside the IoT ecosystem. And what we're tokenizing then are the transactions generated by the object. It can be in the context of a solar panel. You may want to trade the energy that the solar panel will generate and sell it to your neighbor, and you store this energy inside your car's neighbor. But it might be also the data. A solar panel is also capturing a lot of data, and maybe you want to sell that to the weather forecast company around. So what we're doing in that sense is that we're also tokenizing the transactions happening on, in our case, Hedera's infrastructure, making sure that in the end, whatever the context of tokenization we're talking about, we have provided digital integrity for all of it. Whether it's the transaction itself, the payment, the identity, or the integrity of the object and the ownership of the object, we provided it all.
Okay, so you mentioned also personal identity, and Andrew, this morning I saw one of your posts where you're talking about tokenizing people's passports, right? You've just come up with a new solution for physical identity of people.
Yeah, I think that one of the Jonathan really hit the nail on the head with his description. What tokenization is a digital representation of something real. And what makes it unique about doing it on a distributed ledger is blockchains are sort of unique. They're either really good databases or really bad ones. They have the unique property of whatever's written to it is immutable. It can't be changed. And that's why we're able to use these things securely for money, for assets, for assigning identification to a particular instrument or thing, as in the case of SEALCOIN, or in some instances, it may be a novel way of providing assurances of an individual's identification. In Europe, I think by 2030, there's an expectation of something called digital product passports, which will basically combine traceability of items with the identity of items. Now, why is blockchain particularly useful for this sort of thing? Because in programming, all of us are familiar with databases. And if you're not a programmer, I can rest assured that if you're using a phone, you're using a database. You're using a computer, you're using a database. The databases have, by their nature, 4 functions: the ability to create, to read, but then also to update a record and to delete a record. What makes blockchain and distributed ledger technology is that you have the ability to create and to read, but updating and deleting records doesn't happen so easily, if at all. And because of that, everybody can rest assured that any information that is lodged to the blockchain can be, to some extent, trusted. Not because it's true, but because it can't necessarily be changed or adapted by a bad actor. So in this instance, this is why tokenization has such a value in terms of the modern world. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. My last statement is just going to be that tokenization has value in the modern world because as we create digital representations of real things, we can trust that the representation that we make actually is indicative of the real thing in the real world, and that somebody can't go and just arbitrarily or unilaterally change it.
Okay, we just missed your last sentence. Can you repeat that, please?
Yeah, I was just saying that we can trust that the digital representation is indeed indicative of something in the real world, and that a third party can't go into a back-end system of a database and
Sixtine, if I may add to that, this is what's behind the concept of digital integrity. Maybe those are still a bit complex. Let's give you a very easy example to understand. If I send right now a picture of us here to Sixtine via WhatsApp, I will simply send a copy of this picture to Sixtine. I will keep a copy in my phone, and Sixtine will receive a copy. With blockchain and what we mean behind this digital integrity, it means that we can prove that I can send the original of this picture to Sixtine, meaning that when the moment I take the picture, it's mine. The moment I send this picture with its original, with this integrity, not only I can prove that I don't own the picture anymore, but Sixtine can prove that she is the true owner of this picture. And this is what we mean with digital integrity. And before we had those decentralized ecosystems, those blockchain, we could not prove the unicity of a digital object. And this is where in our life, which is everly growing into this digital landscape, it's more and more important to prove this digital integrity.
That's why it was also created, because initially, like anything you do on Facebook or on WhatsApp or anyone, all those centralized platforms, the image remains with them. So they can do what, and you don't know these people. I mean, I don't know Mark Zuckerberg, but I know he uses my pictures and my profile and my comments and whatever. And that's what we're trying to protect the individual from, right? With tokenization. And
at least to have a say in saying, I want to use this ecosystem where I give my rights to Mark Zuckerberg to use my picture or not. Because if I want to keep it, I have a way to do it now from a pure technology point of view.
Yeah.
Do we want that as a society? That's, I think,
that's another philosophical.
It's a physical topic, but I think it's urgent that we ask ourselves that this type of questions, because we have now the technology to do it. So what do we want to, where do we want to go as a society? That's, I think, a very valuable question that we should ask.
We have a question from the audience.
I just want to inject myself because the example you gave is very interesting, but let me present myself. I'm the chairman of the JPEG Standardization Committee. So when this picture is in JPEG, that's something that I was involved in. The technology that you're talking about integrity, means a lot of things. Having on a blockchain tokenized pictures will still continue to allow anybody who receives this picture to use it. It's a question of ownership. It's not a question of whether somebody has. Legally, you could say, I didn't give the permission. That's all you can do. It doesn't prevent people using it. So that's number one, very important. Number two, and this is a question for everybody here. You know, people, especially in art, when you want a certificate, for example, you bought, I don't know, a painting or something, Christine or somebody certifies in paper, and that paper is going to stay forever. If somebody doesn't burn it, or you know, and it will stay a very long time. One of the biggest challenges, and that's the challenge for you, is that if you do not have an infrastructure that will be here forever, these things will never be able to compete with the paper and physical world, right? So my question to all of you is, I'm just, because you gave the example first starting with you, how can you ensure that in 30 years, a piece of art that I bought, whether it is physical or not, but it has been certified to an NFT, is still possible to do that? And how can you ensure even it's legally possible, because you don't have a license to do it? That's really, I think the real problem is this.
I think we're hitting on intellectual property as well from the creator's point of view. I don't know what Georg wants to say about that. Did you get the question, Georg?
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to artworks and physicality, yes, I say that's something that makes absolutely sense for preservation. When it comes to certificates and I mean, you know, certificates can be fakes as well, and I think it's just, I mean, a paper certificate is not really a great solution in my opinion. I mean, most of the art dealers on the secondary market who are buying and selling very valuable artworks, they usually have to re-certify the artworks prior to every sale to make sure that it's a real Picasso, Miro, or etc. So I think I mean I don't think the paper certificate is a great solution, to be honest. I think we should try out this new technology with blockchain, and
the paper is better. I'm just saying that anybody who comes up with a new solution, being innovative is not enough, right? You should at least offer what was before. You're absolutely right. You could also forge certificates. But come on, you know, it's much easier to forge NFTs, okay? Because it's just digital.
Well, it's like email versus physical mail. Like with physical mail, it was hard to like contact thousands of people because you have to pay the stamps. It takes some time. With digital age, you can magically message thousands of people at no cost. And then the scammers come, the spammers, And that led to like the recentralization of email, actually, because you cannot use email without a good spam filter. So now it's Google, Microsoft, etc., and you cannot have your own email server. That's actually what we are building now with Wakweli, to protect this notion of digital certificate. But to jump more on that, on what you said on image, I think like it goes to preservation of the image in itself, and the concept of blockchain, at least for Bitcoin and Ethereum, is like it's immutable. You cannot change it because you basically give a copy of it to anyone who wants. So when you put your image on the blockchain, which is almost not the case, we are talking about Bitcoin stamps, ordinals, etc. For people who do that, and it costs like tons of money because you actually put the pixels on the blockchain. This is here to stay because you distribute it to like the whole planet. But then about the notion of tokenization itself, what do you sell? If you sell like 10 NFTs of the same image, like numerated 1 out of 10, 2 out of 10, etc., it's like a digital photography. For
edition, yeah.
It's like when you go to a vernissage in a gallery, the artist make 10 prints, numbered, signed by the artist. And this has value because the artist said this is something that comes from me. It's the link to the artist. And you can represent that with NFTs, actually. You cannot like block people from copying the image itself, but the link is 10 edition link to the artist, you can represent with NFTs. And this is the thing that value.
It's unique, and you wanted to add something?
3 comments. One, you just made between, I think we need to make the difference between the copy and the origin of the original with the concept of ownership. But I think you in that. My second comment is, you mentioned something also very important, is the nature of the certificate. The certificate is only worth the trustability of the one who's signing the certificate. So if it's paper but signed by someone I don't trust, it's worth 0. If it's digital, that's exactly the same thing, where we haven't solved anything if the quality of the paper is not of the stamp is not there. But your critical question is about the continuity of the technology and longevity over time. And I think what I like, there's one concept that I like in the technology of DLT and blockchain. One is that most of the time it works in open source, so you can access a lot of the technology behind it. The second part is what former technology or other technology called interoperability. Interoperability is key for the continuity and longevity, but it's not the only aspect of things. What we have in blockchain, it's called composability, meaning that whenever you have to build an upgrade of the system or a new piece of software, you need to make sure that you provide this composability where anyone can build on top of it. And that provides this, what is aimed at this longevity or continuity in terms of processing. We had this example also in the blockchain environment of, I don't know if you've heard about forking. You've heard about Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin Classic, Ethereum, Ethereum Classic. With the concept of forking, you can actually upgrade the technology, still keeping the root of the previous technology.
It's like building blocks.
So you're building block, you continue, you allow for continuity, and you have the smart contract which provide the secureness and the very formalized way to operate. And most of the time, for all these ecosystems, you have a consensus mechanism that allows for those aspects that cannot be provided by a rigid smart contract. So we have those 2 elements that put together, we should be able to provide continuity, keep on upgrading the technology, yet keeping what's from the past. But it should be a target. So
I
it's,
don't want to derail the discussion with my question, but
No, but
I wanted to reply. Since you are managing it,
we'll stay after.
whether you want me or not.
But I'm grateful, but also I come from the art world and I come from the traditional art world, and it's been 35 years, but as an art historian, it's been since antiquity. So what I would like to say is that all this new technology, that's what I believe personally, is that it's complementary. And still today, if you're selling a Picasso and you've got your Marina Picasso certificate, which was signed by Jan Crugier when he was alive, and which is in the Zervos number so and whatever. Today, we've got forensic studies of an art piece that will tell you the carbon dating, that will tell you that this type of white was not used or was used at the time of Picasso, etc. And there's all these additional things that go to proving yes or no that it's a Picasso. At the end of the day, if you don't have the committee Picasso, and today it's Paloma, it used to be Claude, signing off, you have nothing. But I think putting it on the blockchain, once you have it, it won't be lost. And it's just a new way of testing it. We have another question before we go.
In that regard, when you're talking about tokenizing something that's an individual and very specific, like the Picasso painting, it's easier to establish trust, whatever the process is. I'm interested in tokenization of things that aren't individual, like we're seeing tokenization of a lot of commodities. So gold, oil, things that the whole point is, it's not an individually identifiable thing. It's just you own a piece of gold in a vault, or you own some of a barrel of oil or some corn in a silo somewhere. What are the mechanisms of building trust between the token, which represents your right to something that doesn't have an individual characteristic to it?
So that might be one for Andrew.
Yeah, it's actually funny. That's a great question about commodities, but there's nothing better in the history of mankind of proving provenance than blockchain. You cannot forge a hash. You can trace every transaction down to its genesis. Provenance can be proven. And that is precisely why money is actually making that leap from fiat, which actually can be physically forged, to DLT, which cannot be forged. The level of cryptography involved and the level of cryptography associated with the chain of ownership through custodianship. So if you are tokenizing gold, even though it's a commodity, there are trusted custodians that demarcate the allocation of gold to a particular unit. Somebody can try and fake or make a fake chain, but in terms of actually forging that particular unit of token or utility, that's just not something that is going to happen. I mean, you literally would need a quantum computer to be able to achieve that, or supercomputers for a number of years to be able to crack that code and try and recreate something in a way that would be believable. There's entire algorithms. So, well, in the case of Hedera, it's a Hashgraph. In the case of blockchains, it's exactly that. Associations of blocks, linkages, and consensus before something that gets put on chain. So we have to separate, I think, as Jonathan said, provenance from being able to take a screenshot or a photo of the Mona Lisa and claiming that in and of itself is a Mona Lisa, or that in and of itself represents an ounce of gold or what have you. With blockchain, it's incredibly secure if people are careful and take the time to ensure that what they have is actually what it's supposed to be, representing gold, a painting, or otherwise.
Okay, thanks, Andrew. I think that makes it a little bit clearer for some of us. We have a question.
Yeah, I was trying to understand this tokenization of physical objects. I was a few minutes late, so maybe you said it and I just missed. But I understand, the way I understood it is sort of an NFT for physical objects, right? Individual physical objects. And while it's very clear how to make this process for digital objects, like our NFT is realized and how the transfer of ownership is across the blockchain. I don't see where you could do this with physical objects, since it's too stable to connect the identity of this table onto the blockchain. And this table doesn't have any digital element, it doesn't have a hardware. So how do I make the association between this table and something that, or any other physical object, and something that lives on the blockchain? And who guarantees that this association is unique? And it is, otherwise we need a notary, and then we're back to the whole story.
So in the context of SEALCOIN, we're not putting tables, we're putting IoT objects. Within each of these IoT objects, you have a secure element, which is a microprocessor inside of a semiconductor object. Okay. What you can do using PKI, public key infrastructure, think of it as a public and a private key pair. Okay. We use this cryptographic mechanism to do what we call provisioning. Provisioning is injecting this digital identity, a certificate. The same you have, by the way, on a website. You have HTTP website, which are not common anymore because everyone has moved to HTTPS. This S, this secure website, it's just the certainty that the domain name has purchased a certificate of authenticity, okay, when it was created. We do exactly the same thing in the context of the website to make sure that you're the owner and the only owner of this website. We inject that physically inside this hardware.
And can that be tampered by someone?
I mean, many have tried, but no one have managed. Andrew mentioned something with quantum computing. With SEALSQ, which is a publicly listed company on the NASDAQ, specialized on creating those semiconductors. It's our design semiconductor manufacturer in south of France. We are releasing for next year what we call TPM, which is a quantum-proof semiconductor. So it should be released for big companies. SEALSQ, this NASDAQ, has publicly announced that they are providing semiconductor for Cisco, for example. So that's very large. They have produced 1.6 billion of these devices already, and 6 billion certificates. A certificate, and maybe Antoine, you can piggyback there. You use a root of trust, which is, going back to your question about how can we ensure the process is secure in this tokenization process, is that to issue one certificate, it has to be complex enough so that it cannot be hacked, so that you cannot take this identity and give it to someone else. This whole process is being audited and verified by actors to understand how it's being produced. Most of the time, those root of certificate issuer, you have DigiCert, you have WISe.ART, you have a few of them in the world.
And the community.
And the community have to provide a way to generate those. We, for example, have this server not connecting online in the inside of a bunker in the middle of a mountain in Switzerland. That's a way to make sure that those certificates, those digital objects, are super secure. And then you have the super security of the physical object, the semiconductor. What we do with SEALCOIN is nothing else but bridging this physical cybersecurity infrastructure with the concept of digital integrity on chain.
The point is that to jump on that, you could technically tokenize this table, then you put a secure component in it to say, this is the property of wallet OX123, etc. But at the end, if you want, you can take it. And if nobody knows that this is the property title and there's no standard, it's pointless. And it's a big part of what we do with Wakweli. We believe that we need a common place for the certification standard, and we believe it cannot be done in a for-profit way. This is why we created a foundation for the protocol, so it's public good. As a for-profit, it couldn't work. But what you asked about, like, how do you make the link between the physical world and the digital world? Because that's basically the thing. How do you say, this represents an actual share of a gold bar? And it's actually a good question because it's not really possible. You have to have someone who says, I will log this gold bar in a vault, and then I do a contract and I say the ownership of what's in this vault is split into 10,000 parts, and I emit 10,000 tokens, And then with this contract, as an owner of this token, I give one to you. But it's still linked to a like
Still kind of
How do
central-
people trust in that part of the process?
Yeah.
It's still centralized partially, you know?
Yes,
There's-
but the point is that if you look at what's happening now with equity, now in Switzerland and in France also, it's possible to actually represent your ownership of shares of a company on a blockchain. This is in the law. It means that the blockchain is the source of truth. And when this becomes possible for other commodities, like maybe there is a guarantee from state, etc., or maybe we have a company so huge that you can actually trust it, but it won't default, like everything, every use case becomes possible. Because if you really tokenize the gold, then you tokenize your property title of your house. Someone can pay the rent, buy a fraction of the gold, and even the company for your energy provider can take the gold in the smart contract to pay for the energy that comes back from IoT. This is composability.
Yeah.
And I believe this is where we go to. And this is why, like consultancy firms sees the tokenized asset market as a $16 trillion market in 5 years. I think this is the reason why.
And the same, your question goes hand in hand with the concept of stablecoin. How can I issue $1 for one USDT or USDC? The way they do that is just to put in place some auditors in hands with the bank, in hands with the regulators, making sure that can you audit how much is in this bank account as USD, really USD, okay? And making sure that all the USDT or USDC in circulation are matching back to back, one to one.
Proof of reserve. This is extremely important. This was the problem with FTX, by the way. This is why.
One of the problem. But that in that context, this tokenization process is rather who you're going to trust in this process of tokenizing the bank, the dollar. Most of the time, it's going to be in the context of in the Swiss context. If you have the Swiss National Bank saying that we can certify that in this account we have 1 million Swiss franc, and you have 1 million token in circulation for the Swiss digital franc, I guess this tokenization, this validation of certification for the tokenization that we've just did is good enough.
Unless the Swiss francs disappear and the tokens stay.
Unless the SNB is not doing his job.
Yeah.
But, and then you can say, okay, but we want more. And we want that PwC or Deloitte comes in and certifies also that they've seen this money on the bank account. Or maybe you can expose this bank account, use it.
Or maybe
The same
you
for
can-
the gold.
Or maybe you can audit 10,000 of different bank accounts, and if one defaults, then you don't lose everything at the same time. Not putting your eggs in the same basket.
We have
Then
a
zero
question
knowledge pool.
from our Zoom audience, so, oh no, we don't, sorry, okay. I'd just like to thank Anastasia, who's at backstage, nobody can see her, but she's running the questions. Now, we were saying, is tokenization already a thing of the past? I don't think so, because it's not quite there yet, but how do you see AI being involved in all of this? Because now it's open source, everybody's talking about artificial intelligence. Is there a link? Is it going to be better, worse? Is it going to make it more dangerous? Who's the evil thought behind it?
Yeah, I think from my side, there's absolutely a link. AI makes the provision of provenance all the more important. Otherwise, you have no idea if the data being used to train your AI system was in and of itself generated by an AI system. So I think back to the original discussion, the utilization of distributed ledger technologies and blockchain provides assurances of where something originates, who it belongs to in the first instance. You can therefore have more effective AI trained models if you know the provenance of the data or the sources of images or what have you that the AI system is being trained on. Because whenever AI systems start to train on their own data in the manner of a photocopy, you end up getting a lot of artifacts and odd results over time. I think referred to as hallucinations. And that's not something you want. It's sort of like digital incest, right? So I think in that regards, the Web3 blockchain technologies and AI, they actually do go hand in hand.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think it's to be able to source the data point used for the AI to run its algorithm. And also you have a big picture, which is not yet applicable, but maybe we can understand that from another point of view in the insurance activity. If you get your insurance providing you with a calculation, you need to have this concept of explainability. You need to be able to explain how you came up with such a premium, okay? The same way will happen with AI. How do you come to the result? Can you prove that you have used only publicly available information, or have you sourced my private data to do so? If we go back to the example where we can actually control the availability of our data, and I can tokenize my consent for using this data, then we can prove if this AI has used my data or not, or has used only genuine data. And this is where it goes hand in hand. And I believe in that context, blockchain and DLT enabling AI to exist. Because in our context, for society and for the democratic values that I believe AI cannot happen the way it exists as of today. But again, that's more the philosophical topic, that where do we want to go as a society?
Yeah. So we're coming on the transhuman code, etc.
Still, for instance, I don't believe at this moment there's a direct correlation between AI and blockchain. But what you say in terms of empowerment of AI, it's key, because the blockchain for the traceability, it's really good. So data provenance, it's a good use case. Blockchain to set up like cloud computing, shared cloud computing to train models, it's also really powerful. And now you see AI models creating meme coins, and because they are connected to a wallet, they can do like AI generated settlement in seconds. Then they do some others, etc. So this is all interconnected, work together. So I believe we'll see some weird use cases in the coming years and some really powerful ones.
And also, I think it's important to understand that we're using a digital infrastructure which is controlled by a few. Let's put it that way. What we can enable using DLT technology is the concept of decentralized governance. And this is why earlier I spoke about democracy. Which type of value do we want? Do we want to live? So today in our physical environment, we live in a democratic country in Switzerland, in a democratic region in Europe. But as soon as we step in our digital lives, we live in more environment controlled by a few. I'm not judging that. I'm just, this is now a reality where our physical freedom is colliding with our digital lives. So again, do we want to have that or not? And if not, DLT is providing an alternative in terms of decentralized governance, which is a bit closer to our democratic values. I'm not saying we should go there. I'm just saying that we have tools now to do it. What do we want again? And it's all about educating ourselves to make sure that we can take the right decisions.
Question for Georg. You're being involved, or you're part of the project of Paintbox. And the reason I'm saying that is Paintbox is a software that came out, what, 10 years ago, more or less, and now they're doing a world. Is this already a vintage? Are they revamping using AI and going to go for more new artists? What's the story there? And will it be tokenized? Is that all a part of it, a part of your project, if it's your project?
Thank you for mentioning Paintbox. It's a new project that we announced in Miami. Paintbox, the Quantel Paintbox was probably one of the first computer graphic tools that was used from 1981 on, so it's much older than you mentioned. It's 40 years. It's been a major tool for broadcasting television in the MTV era. A lot of the major CD or at that time it was record covers or film posters were created on the paint box, like for example Nirvana, Nevermind, etc. And we're gonna do actually a tour where we use this vintage hardware software combination to invite artists of our generation to create new artworks on the paint box. And yes, there are some artists that have actually implemented AI somehow. So it's quite interesting how artists are kind of hacking the system and creating some very new types of artworks, which will be tokenized if they are interested. And we will be showing this project as a retrospective exhibition in Basel next year at the ArtMETA, the Digital Art Mile, where we not only bring an original vintage paint box there, but also we will present some early artworks made in the 80s, as well as the whole history around this tool and the productions of the new productions of the artists, contemporary artists that we have invited to make artworks on it. It's quite amazing how artists are responding to this tool. There's a lot of excitement, and it's also very exclusive actually to have access to this tool, because not many artists have ever been able to work on this very expensive hardware, which at the time when it came out cost like $250,000. And I mean, that would be nowadays probably $1 million. And in fact, there was one artist at that time, Richard Hamilton, who even owned a paint box, and quite a few of his outputs were made on the paint box. So yeah.
I'm going to be super biased here, but without artists, tech wouldn't evolve, right? It's their creativity that makes it all happen. Well, we've been over an hour. Are there any more questions?
Yes, so in 2026, Switzerland, Europe, and big tech giant will launch the world of verifiable credentials, where basically you will have your identity documents, identity documents, and will be available for every citizen. How do you see let's say, the coexistence of the certificates and so all the tokens with this new ecosystem of verifiable credentials?
So the compatibility.
Well, compatibility, and maybe it's a disruptive factor as well for tokens, because here you could have very well your let's say your certificates with under a form of a verifiable credential. You could basically have some basic interactions, as you mentioned previously, so you don't need to have your identity stored somewhere, so you can use the one that you receive from your government.
Yeah. So I want to make it brief. We have 1 minute. Take that.
I can. So basically,
and I wish you Merry Christmas before you go.
Basically, government guaranteed identity in a digital way. So it's the same thing you can have with a crypto wallet. It's the same thing you have actually with your email address. It's the same tech, but with government backing, which actually it's already the case in Balkans, in Estonia, etc. You have verified credentials. So in terms of tying your identity to some digital activity, it's really good. Like it's a really strong correlation. And it will play well with other things that you could do in pseudonymity, in anonymity, in a different way with what we currently have.